Hi, Louie Gohmert, Member of Congress from Texas, and I have just finished sitting in the House chamber and listening to the President's State of the Union address. And I got to tell you, I am so encouraged because he said that everybody's doing better on health insurance now. The economy's it's better than it's been in 15 years or so. That there are no more crises in the world, that we're beyond any crisis, we're beyond the shadow of the crisis. So I'm just deeply encouraged that there's no more big problems. Just really wonderful to hear that. And then I start thinking about reality, and the reality is that there are horrendous crises around the world. I have wept with people in Africa whose daughters were taken captive and have been abused sexually and probably sold into sex trafficking. I have visited with people whose family members were part of the largest number of Christians being persecuted in the history of the world. I visited with people in Israel and with Jews around in other parts of the world who are afraid for their own safety like they haven't been since World War II. I have visited with people all over East Texas whose health insurance is costing more with a higher deductible and providing them less of the coverage they needed. I'm hearing from family members that are just really suffering financially, having to take on more part-time jobs because of the policies this president has implemented and because of Obamacare, because of so many different things. I am so very grateful that God has blessed Texas with the energy that he has, because it's because of production of energy in Texas as much or more than anywhere else that the price of gasoline has come down. And so that is the good, but it had nothing to do with this president's policies. He talks about wanting to make college more affordable, and yet he proposes a policy that if we allowed it to go into law, this president would start taxing, under what he's proposed, would be taxing the college funds that have been set aside by so many middle-class families to try to pay for their child to go to college. There's already money that's being made available in grants and loans for the poorest in America to attend community colleges. Now he's going to tax the middle class that has saved money for their kids' college. That's not the kind of thing that we were looking for. He talked about the economy coming back and that we need to do more to bring manufacturing jobs. He is exactly right about that. And having talked to leaders of industry in China who have taken industries to China away from the United States, I thought they'd tell me that it was the cost of labor that drove them to another country, but not so. Over and over again, it was the high corporate tax rate that drove them there, 17% in China, whereas you're paying over twice that much here. If we lower the corporate tax rate, which really is a tariff on our own American-made goods, we slap over a third the cost of a good as a tariff on our own good. You take that tariff away, or at least dramatically lower it, and we would be competitive anywhere in the world with American goods. Industries would start flooding back to America. We could then begin to manufacture the things that we really need so that we can be a superpower that is self-supporting. And when he talks about the rule of law and how important that is, this is a man who has ignored the Constitution. His administration has seen to over 2,000 guns go into drug cartels, and no one has been prosecuted for any of that. In fact, they continue to obfuscate and cover up the crimes that occurred there. we're not being the kind of good neighbor we should be to Mexico and to Central America, and he doesn't address that. He thinks being a good neighbor means encouraging the best and brightest in Central America and Mexico to come into America illegally, when the best neighbors we could be would be to help them take out the drug cartels and stop any radical Islamic groups from using our porous southern border. You can't help but wonder that if we were attacked from across our southern border, as happened during President Wilson's administration by Pancho Villa's gangs, how long would it take this president to truly secure the border? A week? 2 weeks? Why can't he do that now? We passed a law in 2006 when I was a freshman that mandated certain fencing, certain protections on our border. It has not been finished. In fact, this administration has said we're not going to finish that work. It's time for this president to say, you know what? We're going to start complying with the law ourselves in this administration. He says he wants the rich paying their fair share. Well, folks, Art Laffer, Reagan's economic advisor, Dr. Arthur Laffer, brilliant guy, but he's explained more clearly than I could, so I'll try to explain as he has. But anytime you hear someone say, we're going to raise revenue by taxing the rich even more, what you're going to do is add to the tax burden of the middle class. Because the rich are really the only ones that you never can adequately tax, because if you say we're going to raise taxes on them, they're the only ones that can pick up and move elsewhere, or they can reconfigure their earnings like Warren Buffett did. So you don't end up raising tax on the rich because they can always do something, including moving, to avoid the taxes. And then all that revenue you said you were going to raise, it ends up having to come from the middle class and increasing the burden on them. That's why this is the president, for the first time in our history, that has presided over a country where 95% of the income has gone to the upper 1% income earners, the most wealthy. It's never happened before in our history. It's because his policies reward the rich and actually penalize the middle class and hurt the poor. So the poor are poor, middle class is smaller, the gap between the poor and the rich is wider. If you really want to have a fair tax across the board, make it a flat tax. Just tax the same percentage across the board, and then the rich, those who make more will pay more, those who make less will pay less. It accomplishes the president's goals. So I'm hoping that the president will be true to his word and be open to working with Congress instead of, as he has been doing, either you do what I tell you or I will do it by myself, though it's unconstitutional. I want to work with the president. I want to work to make America better. But we need to follow the law, and whether laws are broken or not being followed, we need to either make people follow them or fix them. But until the border is secured, there's no use passing an immigration reform bill, because we'll just have to do an amnesty every year or two. We need to secure the border. You'll be amazed what I'll agree to once the border is secured. Secure the border and then create the jobs in America, not drive down the wages by bringing in people illegally to take those jobs from Americans, not giving amnesty to people that jumped at the front of the line in front of people that have been working for years to come legally. It's time that we rewarded people who follow the law and penalize people who don't follow the law. It's time that we became the strength in actually protecting Americans abroad and at home. Because when we stand strong, when we are using and developing our strength, people are safer around the world. I've heard it in Africa, I've heard it in the Middle East, I've heard it in the Far East. They need America strong, because when we're not strong, they get hurt. There's so much we can do. There's so many goals of the president I agreed with, and I hope he'll actually stay true to those being goals he wants to accomplish. Because if they are, we can get there. Thanks so much.